49% of China's population and 46% of its labor force. This number is sizably higher than that in many Western countries. Analysts say this is because Communist China saw women as a resource and actively used them to contribute to the economic growth engine. After all, it was Mao Zedong who first said, "Women hold up half the sky."
Women hold up half the sky today. This is the catchphrase of the World Economic Forum's latest Global Gender Gap report. But let's see where India stands. On an overall basis that takes into consideration things like access to education, health, participation in political and economic activity, India ranks 113 out of 135 nations. Now, a paper published earlier this year by the World Bank analyzes this data to better understand gender disparities in economic participation in the country. Here's what the study reveals. We are pretty close to the average scores when one excludes economic participation. But if one were to take it under consideration, India fares worse than 95% of all the countries in the sample. Now, this does sound rather alarming, and India's shining enthusiasts might rubbish these findings. So let's take a nuanced look at the numbers. Here's a report card on women in India's labour market.
The Global Gender Gap report measures economic participation in terms of salaries and highly skilled employment. On these parameters, the picture in India is indeed dismal. At 36%, the labour participation rate for women in India is one of the lowest in the world. And of these, only 19% work in the organised manufacturing and services sectors. And this is no surprise given that organised sector work is directly related to enrolment rates in higher education. Only 38% women are enrolled in higher education in India compared to 62% men. Ultimately, a majority of women still work in agriculture and allied unorganized industries, and on an average for equal work earn only 62% of a man's salary. A United Nations study finds that India's growth rate would increase by 1.08 percentage points if its female labour participation rate was on par with the US at about 60%.
This is something that we're going to be analysing over the next few weeks, how women in India are engaged in the fundamental pillars of our economy. From India's sunrise sector to IT and BPO services to the banking and financial services space and the sector that's trying to make a comeback from the fringes, manufacturing. Will female participation in this decade play a crucial role in reviving growth in India's manufacturing sector? That's on the show this week.
We travel to Nokia's factory near Chennai, where women make up 55% of the workforce.
We found that the women had much better dexterity. There's a bit of passion that comes out, from women being around. So that's something which has been driving us to go with that model.
We meet Sasi Kala from Tata Industries, who's worked her way up from the shop floor to the corporate headquarters.
I was in manufacturing, especially in assembly line, for almost 20 years. Establishing the production, establishing various testing machines. That equipment is called as Vichy, and then people used to make me fun that, yeah, you are Vichy doctor coming.
And we find out why heavy engineering major Cummins is investing in running a women's only engineering college in Pune. Cummins makes a concerted effort to be more open and less biased, to create a workforce that is representative of local realities. And this is not an easy ask. It requires planning and policy direction at every stage.
The commitment has to be aligned, and it has to flow right from the global chairman to the leaders down the level in the organization. So that's the first one. Few years back, we probably had no diversity at all. Okay, we had 2%, 3% kind of diversity. So the folks, when they're not used to it, for them to get the idea of importance of diversity, you got to kind of drill the message into them, just not by setting some kind of targets, but you have to make them understand the importance of it, make them understand the importance of the business case. Then of course you need to start off with the recruiting efforts, making the recruiting teams understand the importance of it, and then they going ahead and putting the applicant pool, which is all inclusive.
But in a country where enrollment rates for women in technical studies remains low, Cummins India Foundation in 1991 decided to contribute towards creating a viable pool of talent. The Cummins College of Engineering for Women in Pune is the country's first women's-only engineering institute with over 2,000 students on campus at any point of time.
Basically, my favorite subject is maths, so actually I wanted to get into something that involves logic and understanding rather than something that involves only learning. So I took up engineering, and the 2 years haven't disappointed me.
In initial years, definitely the preference was given to the boys. Maybe it was their impression that the girls won't be able to work for more hours, but the girls, they are really proved that they are compatible, they are competitive also in the sector, and they are performing quite well. And more important is that their retention ratio in the companies is quite good. They work there for longer years, and they are not only behind the pay packages and money matters, but they look forward for the job satisfaction. And therefore I am finding now some companies, even they insist to recruit the certain percentage of the women.
Cummins was there at my college for the campus recruitment drive, so the presentations they made and the emphasis they had on diversity, the focus they had on diversity, it really encouraged me to take up this job. My manager had just moved out for some personal reasons, so there was a period where for 6 months we had a gap. But that time my managers, that is the management, has really helped me. They trusted me, they gave me a responsibility which only an experienced person could have. That was a really turning point for my career.
This mega site at Faltan, a couple of hours from Pune, is one of Cummins' largest manufacturing units in India. Women like Anjali today make up 21.5% of the workforce on the shop floor at this plant. Now this number might seem rather low, but one has to consider that of the 4 shifts that keep this plant going, women work only in 2.
The problem with our labor laws is that they distinguish between men and women. They say, hey, if you are a man, you can work in all shifts. If you are a woman, you can't work in second shift, third shift. So we had to seek special permission with the government, and of course they were kind enough to give us the permission. Now with that we are running a second shift operation. See, if you don't do that, the problem is men on the shop floor are going to complain that hey, women are not doing this, they are not in the second shift, they are not in the third shift, they can't do bunch of things, then why are you bringing in? See, our challenge is to let them understand that look, they can work like you, they can think like you, and they can be part of this ecosystem, and they can create much better environment. Okay, so we just want to be gender neutral, so we're working towards that.
But before our corporations can become gender neutral, do we need a more progressive labor law regime for the manufacturing sector which doesn't differentiate between the sexes? That's on the other side of the break. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. You're watching What Women Really Want. Now, women's participation in economic activity has always been viewed by a gendered eye. And an analysis of the debate around women's employment in night shifts in the 20th century presents a clear reflection of the patriarchal norms that governed the utilization of female labor in industry.
The call to ban the employment of women in night shifts was a raging debate amongst industrialized nations in the early 1900s. After a few European countries banned women from working in the night shift, demands emerged for a blanket international prohibition so that all nations remain equally competitive. The International Labour Organization in 1919 passed legislation to this effect. With 2 exceptions, women in healthcare would continue working nights, and women could be called upon in times of emergencies to make up for manpower shortages, quite literally.
This prohibition by the ILO was rolled back only in 1990, with some restrictions continuing on employment of pregnant workers in the night shift. In India, the Factories Act of 1948 under Section 66 banned working women in night shifts. It was only judicial activism in the late 1990s and early 2000s that led to a rollback of the ban. Here's a quick look at where we stand today.
Labour law in India is governed by both the Central Factories Act as well as state-level legislations. By and large, these legislations don't restrict women from working night shifts. But the sticky point is that they merely suggest that employers should ensure safety and transportation. That is to say that there is no legal obligation for corporations to provide these. A study commissioned by ASSOCHAM and the National Commission for Women finds that it's actually just the IT and BPO industry in India that's reaped the biggest benefits from this policy change, partly because they've made it a point to comply with safety norms. The study concludes that in comparison, the manufacturing sector has much catching up to do. But there are some bright spots in manufacturing too, especially in the SEZs that dot Tamil Nadu's landscape. Nokia is one of them. Located about an hour from Chennai, the Nokia Telecom SEZ near Sriperumbudur houses the Finnish phone maker's biggest manufacturing unit in the world. Employing over 9,000 people, 55% of who are women with an average age of 22.
First time joined in Nokia as a trainee operator. After 2 years, I got an opportunity. I am promoted to a training coordinator.
When I joined, I am reporting to my superior. Now 25 people reporting to me. It is very proud of to me.
After joining college, I could not continue my studies, but my cousins, everyone are studying engineering. I got a guilty feeling that I didn't study. But after joining Nokia, I completed my degree, UG. Even my husband is working as an engineer. Due to my position in my mother-in-law, father-in-law's home also, I got the same status what my husband has got.
And Nokia in this SEZ belt at least is an employer of choice. The company pays better wages to both contract labour and permanent staff and has recognised an independent labour union post-strikes in 2010. Nokia is one of the few companies in this SEZ belt that runs a fully functional night shift, but this hasn't come without its set of challenges.
I think the challenge that we faced initially was about having them come in their shifts, in the night shift as well, because we are one of these sites which has a night shift operation. And so that was an issue, initially challenge where the parents were not completely comfortable. And I think over a period of time what we have done is we've had programs where we bring families to the factory and have them look the facilities and the infrastructure that's available. There is an unsaid law about the night shift women and security, and so now we've implemented where each of our buses where women are, there are security guards. So yes, those kind of things for some of the businesses, they may not be able to afford it, but those are things that I think we should anyway do as a responsibility.
And some of the other things Nokia does as part of its responsibility is to run a creche for working mothers, many of whom live at considerable distances from the factory and have little support given that they might have moved out of their family homes in search of employment.
ஜாப் கண்டுவாங்கன்னு ஒரே டென்ஷனாக இருந்தது. ஏன்னா பாப்பாலாம் பிறந்துட்டா ரொம்ப கஷ்டமாக இருக்கணும். பட் கிரச்சுன்னு ஒரு ஃபெசிலிட்டிஸ் இருக்கிறனால என்னோட பேபிஸை பார்த்துக்கிறதுக்கும் அலோவ் பண்ணுறாங்க. ரொம்ப ஈஸியாக இருக்குது ஜாப்க்கு போயிட்டு வர்றதுக்கு. வீட்லேயும் ஹெல்ப்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்காங்க, இங்கேயும் ரொம்ப ஹெல்ப்ஃபுல்லாக இருக்காங்க.
But for Nokia, having women on the workforce is not just a good thing to do. The company doesn't see investments made on security, transportation, daycare, or even the various training programs it conducts in-house on spoken English, computers, accounting as a liability, because the management clearly recognizes the business case for having women on the team.
Right now we are at 55%. We started off at 70%. And what really happened was when we were going through the interview process for the electronics assembly, we found that the women had much better dexterity. And so out of the tests that we had conducted, they performed quite well. So that's really was the driver behind. And then of course, as we had them over the years, we find that there's a bit of passion that comes out, from women being around, and some of the feedback that we get is the kind of belonging that they bring. So that's something which has been driving us to go with that model.
On that note, it's time for us to take a break. But on the other side, we look at why Titan Industries is looking to create a workforce with 95% women at its new unit in Pantnagar.
When one thinks of manufacturing industries, one typically imagines massive assembly lines and larger-than-life machinery manned by scores of factory hands. But here's a factory with a difference. Here, the assembly line work calls for an eye for detail, manual dexterity, and fineness in embellishment. This is the fine art of marking time, the art of making a watch.
The story of Titan Industries is a unique one. The fifth largest watchmaker in the world, the company actually began as a joint venture between the Tata Group and the Tamil Nadu Industrial Development Corporation in 1984 with the aim of providing employment to rural men and women in Krishnagiri as well as Dharmapuri districts. And for Titan, the company's CSR program and its business strategy actually feed off each other.
My father couldn't do much of education, so he was very keen that all of us should get into a technical thing. Like one is in civil, one is in mechanical, I am in electronics. So never I had that kind of reluctance from my parents, because it was their ambition and added to that my ambition which got fulfilled.
Sasikala's story is perhaps representative of many others at Titan. From a family dependent on agriculture for a livelihood, Sasikala started out at Titan when she was just 21 as a technician trainee.
Within 4 years or 5 years of my joining, I was given one more opportunity of, going to France and Swiss, where we were transferring the technology of manufacturing to India, to make it indigenous. So I was part of the team where, I was very proud that I am the only lady going to France at that time from manufacturing, and then it made me feel so proud.
And after spending 20 years on the shop floor in various functions and roles, steadily moving up the ladder, Sasikala for the last 5 years has been working out of Titan's corporate headquarters as Senior Manager, Knowledge Management. And her story is not a one-off. It's Titan's business strategy to ensure that women don't retire just as workmen, because they believe they bring a lot to the job.
The kinds of roles they have, they really are there to do a good job rather than merely to do the job that has been given to them. So they go beyond their realm of responsibility, they extend it. And that I found more in women than in the rest. When we started, especially in watch manufacturing, in watch assembly, the finger dexterity, the ability to concentrate, disciplined work and repetitive work is what they demonstrated as being very good at. Thereafter, that has extended to all our manufacturing units, especially where assembly is very high. In the northern region we have in Uttarakhand, and our unit in Pantnagar, for example, is now largely girls.
And Titan's commitment to work with women extends beyond its factory gates. Since 1995, Titan has been outsourcing some of its functions to local women's groups and NGOs. Over the years, over 300 women have come together to form Management of Enterprise and Development of Women, or MEDO, a full-fledged business enterprise that manages functions like dial and bracelet making, as well as quality checks for packaging for the Titan plant in Hosur.
ரொம்பவே எவ்வளவோ நல்லா நிறைய பணம் சம்பாரிச்சேன். என்னால் முடிஞ்சது வேலை செஞ்சு பணம் சம்பாரிச்சேன். வீட்டுக்கு தேவையான பொருள் எல்லாம் வாங்கி கொடுத்தேன். எனக்கு தேவையான பொருள், நகை, துணிங்க எல்லாம் நான் வாங்கிட்டேன். வீட்டில் இருக்கிறவங்களுக்கும் என்னென்ன தேவையோ அதெல்லாம் வாங்கி கொடுக்க என்னால் முடிஞ்சது.
Today, at a company level, women make up 26% of the workforce and the number is much higher in manufacturing at 46%. Bhaskar Bhatt feels this figure can go higher if the supply chain of women from engineering colleges becomes more robust and the government creates policies that incentivize companies to hire women.
We may have to encourage, and why can't there be even tax benefits for employing women in the workforce, especially in manufacturing? It could be a small but still meaningful tax benefit to a company, because companies certainly are driven by business, and it would what is wrong in giving a small tax sop?
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of What Women Really Want. Next week on the show, we continue our focus on the manufacturing sector and we look at what companies like Bosch, ABB and Tata Motors are doing to bring about changes and how the SME ecosystem is accommodating women in India. All of that and more on our next episode. Till then, from the entire team, goodbye and many thanks for watching.